best you never had. I'm the best you never had. My little baby, jailbreak, stay. That's all way. Wanna watch that. Yeah, I'm on work. If you want that, is your role. Be precise.
Alright y'all, so we back. Welcome to another BandClap TV rant video. Yeah, I mean, this one shouldn't be too long because I don't really got too much to say, at least upon making this, because y'all know how I get. Once I get on the mic and I start talking, I mess around and this video be over an hour long just like my other one. So I'm really trying, y'all. I'm striving. I'm not gonna say I'm trying, I'm striving to be a little bit more consistent when it comes to my videos, since I'm starting to see that I'm getting a lot of subscribers and I'm getting a lot of people checking out my videos and hit me up on Instagram and my email. Like I always say, I appreciate all the support that I get. Y'all don't know how much it means to me to see an Instagram DM, a Facebook message, a YouTube comment, just talking about how these little rant videos that I do actually change people's lives and people are actually learning from my rants. So remember, this side of my career is still on that hobby type of stage, so I just do this type of stuff for fun. But damn, imagine if I get serious doing this. Ooh, man, that'll be something, won't it? Well, maybe in due time, if I end up getting some type of request to start speaking somewhere or something in that regard, maybe then I'll start taking it serious. How about that? So, as I always say, shout out to everybody who commented and watched the video that I did about Oya. Also, shout out to Masterly Foolish and anybody else who shared my video and anybody else who that video touched. So, it was one thing that Oya always says to me all the time, and then when I look at her mythology, it's something that she used to do a lot when you look at her and pretty much all of her incarnations that she's had. And I was almost about to name the podcast this, but I didn't really have too much subject matter on it to make a full podcast, so I'm gonna just start this rant video off with it. And what she said was, stop worrying for nothing, or don't worry for nothing. And that's something that we do a lot as people, always busy, always on the grind, always feeling like somebody's out to get us, always feeling like we got so much to lose, so we always got to be on our toes and on 10 all the time. And see, that's the thing that I really love about being in Elegua's energy. And it's also one of those things that when you're in Elegua's energy and Eshu's energy a lot, sometimes people see you as unstable, unreliable sometimes, but it's one of those things to where if you're happy, then fuck what anybody else got to say or think, because at the end of the day, it's all about what gives you peace and what makes you happy enough to get up in the morning and say that I'm having a blessed day. But the main thing that Elegua teaches you is that you don't have to rush things, because when you rush things, sometimes it still don't end up the way you want it. Had you just been patient and let things flow the way it was supposed to flow. And usually when you let things flow the way they're supposed to flow, things happen on time. It may not be your time, but it always happens in its divine time. But when you look in Oya's life, that's the one thing that she was always doing. She was always worried. She was always trying to stay on top of everything. And in the end, that's what messed her up in a lot of situations. And I touched on this a little bit when I did that live stream video around the time that Nipsey Hussle passed away. And I was talking about some examples that I've been getting in my life, because one thing when it comes to dealing with a lot of these deities and Orishas and stuff like that, they'll put certain physical things in your life to teach you lessons. So that way you can take the lesson and teach somebody else in Orisha story about that lesson. And in a lot of ways, that's what keeps the lineage going, because it's 2019. We can't keep talking about donkeys and cowrie shells and all of the stuff that used to go on back in the 18, 17, 1600s and far back, in order for the youth to be able to take these Orishas and this African spirituality and pass it on to their generation. We're going to have to update a lot of these archetypes, and we're going to have to update a lot of these stories while still preserving the lessons and the messages that our Babalaos and our teachers, spiritual teachers, taught us. And I feel like with enough of us Eleguas and Papa Legbas and any other enlightened man whose gift and talent and mission on this earth is to be a messenger, to take messages from the astral realm as well as the underworld and give it to people on this earthly plane, we all have that power to be able to transform these patakis and these deities into ways that they can be more relatable to us in this day and time. So a lot of us in this earthly plane are still connected to that higher source, still connected to the Most High, in the fact of a lot of times when we have things on our mind and when we have things that we don't know how it's going to go, we got problems that we don't really know how it's going to be solved and all of that. And sometimes we can even have a vision about the thing working out, or we can have a vision about where we're supposed to go or what we're supposed to do. All we have to do is either go in that direction in faith, or just stay patient and just be still and let everything work out in its own divine timing. But sometimes in this world, we have other stumbling blocks and other things in our way that sometimes would make us disregard what the Most High has already shown us the path to go. And we just start worrying for nothing. And then we start trying to do things our own way and try to do things in a faster way just because somebody else may be riding our back telling us that we need to hurry up and get this done. Or maybe you got people in your circle that's looking at you like, oh, this person right here isn't putting in the amount of work that we're putting in, because on paper it seems like you may not be. But what other people don't realize is there's a method to your madness. And especially as men, we have to really be able to stand on our principles, and we have to be able to stand on whatever that vision or whatever that spiritual message was that's telling you to stay still no matter what, or that voice inside of your head that's telling you that you might need to take this approach instead of taking this approach. And I can't lie, living in a world that pretty much disregards spirit, and living in a world that pretty much disregards everything that's metaphysical, everything that has to do with your higher self, doing that is easier said than done. And I definitely know, because I've been in a lot of situations, especially in my life, that could have been prevented had I just did what the Most High said, aka listen to my higher self, when my higher self was telling me not to make that move just yet, or not to do that thing just yet. And out of desperation, we do it anyway, and then we suffer the consequences thereof. And when it gets to that point and you're in that space where you got to suffer those consequences, it's nobody's fault but yours. You know, you have no one to blame but yourself when you're going through those things that you didn't even need to go through. It wasn't even in your path to go through it, but now you're going through this because you tried to take a shortcut and you tried to take a detour. When in this life that we're living in this game called life, there is no shortcuts. There is no cheat codes. The only thing that you can really do in order to get ahead in this game is to create your own mod. And when you create that mod for yourself, you can't be going around telling people what you're doing all the time, because not everything that works for you is going to work for them anyway. And then if something that's working for you really good, once you tell that person and it doesn't work for them the way it's working for you, now this is where jealousy and envy comes in, because now that person is going to be pissed off that you're getting ahead and they can't get ahead. And people take that different ways. You know, this could be a type of situation to where this is where you truly find out who your friends are, unfortunately. So now you got to start doing some spiritual and personal yard maintenance, meaning that now, since your grass is getting cut low and you starting to see the snakes, it's up to you what you do from that point, because it is true, snakes eat rats. And if you got a rat and you let that rat stay loose, now your whole harvest is in danger of getting compromised. So one of my examples that I went through in my life that taught me this is, there was a situation that I was going through with my truck, because when I first got my truck, I bought it from OfferUp, so that was already a red flag. And then when I went to the Walmart where the guy was at with the truck and I finally bought it off of him, there was a few things that was wrong with it. It didn't have a brake caliper on it, so I couldn't really drive it like that because I couldn't really use the brakes when I first got it. And the main thing that was wrong with it was that the truck had 2017 tags on it from Philadelphia, and the guy gave me this old bill of sale that looked like it was so worn out you could barely read it. So he was telling me that I can take that bill of sale to the tax collector's office, and that way I can get tags and all of that. So the first thing that I did was to get most of the stuff that was wrong with my truck fixed, which was definitely the brakes and the headlight and a couple other things. So when I went to the Orange County tax collector so I can go ahead and get everything put in my name, the lady was like, we need another bill of sale because the one that I had, it was too worn out. So I was like, okay, that was a hell of a curveball. So I hit up the guy from OfferUp and I found out that his name wasn't on the bill of sale, meaning that I guess this dude haven't even registered the car in his name. So I found out that the truck that I had, it's been passed around to a couple owners, but no one that the car was given to was actually legally the owner of the truck, meaning that the original owner is who I had to in some type of way get in contact with. So I'm like, oh shit. So plan B. I'm like, okay, I know it's about to be damn near impossible for me to find the original owner of the truck, because by the looks of things, he's all the way in Pennsylvania. So I said, okay, let me try to take this bill of sale and try to trace over it or rewrite it in the same handwriting kind of that the original owner wrote in. So I did that, and I tried to take it back to the DMV, and just like I expected, they pretty much knew what I did. So the lady was like, now not only do you have to bring back a filled out bill of sale from the original owner to get the title switched over, now you also need to bring us a copy of the owner's driver's license too. So this is the part of the story where I really started to worry, because I'm like, man, I done spent so much money to get this truck. I done spent so much money to get this truck fixed to the point where I can regularly drive it. I done put so much time and effort just for y'all to turn me around and not even let me be legal out here on these streets driving. So that really started to get my blood boiling. So I'm sitting in the parking lot of the DMV pretty much feeling defeated, because I'm like, at this point, if I get pulled over with these 2017 tags and the car isn't even in my name, this is gonna be a real effed up situation going on. So while I'm sitting in my truck trying to plot my next move, there was this old homeless man that was walking around the parking lot, and he really looked homeless. Like, looked like he haven't took a bath in a long time, and he was walking around the whole parking lot trying to ask people to borrow some money. And one by one, people kept turning him down, and he was to the point where he was like, look, I'm willing to do any type of work that you need done, anything. Like, he just needed money, and he was very humble, but at the same time, it was getting dark, so he was kind of desperate for at least something just so he can get something to eat. So I'm still pissed off, and he started walking towards my truck. So I pretty much already knew what I was gonna say, but something inside of me really wanted me to give that person some money, because like I told y'all, I've been homeless before. I've never been to the point where I was begging on the street, but shit, I was damn close. I've been through a lot. So I understand how it feels to be down on your luck and need some help, and nobody's there to help you out. But the way I was feeling at the time, I didn't have a generous heart like I usually do. So he came to me and pretty much told me his spiel, and I told him, I was like, man, I'm going through some things right now, and I really want to help you out, but I'm a little busy with my own problems right now. And I said a prayer. I was like, look, if by some type of miraculous way I can get in contact with this owner, man, I'll get this dude $5, because the Most High knows my heart. So me, I'm the type of person to where I don't like being in a negative emotional headspace for long, because when you're in that negative emotional headspace, you're not thinking logically, and you end up claiming defeat and throwing in the towel way too early, when if you could have just used your brain and used your head, you would be able to come up with your own solution to get out of your own problem. And also, I had to really analyze how I got that truck this far. I'm like, look, I got too much respect for the Most High to think that he would let me get this truck, get my hopes up, have me spend all this money just for me not to be able to do nothing with it. Come on now. I should know better than to think that my higher self got such a malintent to do me like that. So one thing I learned, that once you start thinking about things like that, situations in your life have no other option but to change and go in your favor, even if the cards are stacked against you. So I did all I knew I could do. So I went on the bill of sale and found who the guy's name was, and then I typed it in on Google, and then I also typed in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, just to see could I get anything. And to my surprise, there was a few names that came up. So then all I had to do was look at the title so I could match the addresses together. Then once I did that, I found these Yellow Pages phone book type of website. And you know, some of those websites be real and some of those websites be scams, because they'll give you one number and then they'll be like, if you want access to the other numbers, you got to pay us a certain fee in order to unlock those numbers. So I didn't really have any money at the time. All the money that I saved up was so that I could get this truck put in my name, and also so I can get car insurance, because mind you, I even got the car insurance before I got it put in my name. So y'all can imagine all of the negative thoughts that I had to fight out of my head, because I'm like, bro, I done spent way too much money for me to give up now. And that was my mindset. I'm like, look, I'm not about to give up until I exhaust every single option. So I took a leap of faith and I clicked on the first number that I saw that was free, and I called it. So it rang a couple times and a guy answered, and he was like, police department, how can I help you? I was like, oh shit. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I got the wrong number. And usually when you say you got the wrong number, the other person would just hang up. But this particular instance, the person on the other end, he was like, wait, who was it that you was trying to talk to? And I was like, look, officer, I'm trying to find, let's just call him Mike Johnson. So I'm trying to reach Mike Johnson because I'm here at the DMV and I got his title in my hand, but somebody had this truck from Offer Up, and now they won't even let me put this truck in my name unless I got that person's driver's license. And as soon as I explained myself and I explained who I was, the voice on the other end was like, yo, I'm him, I'm Mike, I apologize for that. And man, when I tell y'all, I felt so fucking happy. Like every single happy song that's ever been made just started playing in my head all at once. And we had a conversation. He was like, man, ever since Google put my number on that website, people been calling my phone and playing on my phone. So now every time I answer the phone, I say, welcome to the sheriff's department, because usually that'll scare away any bill collectors or anything like that. And plus, he was an older man, so he haven't changed his numbers. He told me ever since there was a such thing as singular wireless. And I know some of y'all, especially y'all millennials, don't know anything about singular wireless, but singular wireless was bought out by AT&T. But that shows me how old it showed me how old he was, that he still had a singular wireless phone number. So it turned out that he didn't live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania anymore, that he actually lived in Florida. Now he lived a ways from me, but I'm I'm like, shit, when the Most High gives you something, not all the time is the Most High gonna make it easy where it just lands in your lap. But I know that my higher self would never put more on me than I can bear. So I'm like, look, if it's meant for me to go and get this truck put in my name and all of that, the Most High is gonna put a veil of protection over my truck. So that way, when I go to meet this guy, I don't get stopped by the cops because I got a 2017 tag on my car. So long story short, I went there, we met up. He was a real cool dude, I can't even lie, because anybody else probably wouldn't have done that. So he was able to give me all the things that I needed for the truck, and I was able to get the truck put in my name. And the rest is pretty much history. I mean, I done traveled, went to Georgia like 3 times and back. I done got selected to work at the NFL draft, so I had to drive all the way down to Nashville. When I went to see my little brother graduate, I drove all the way down to Memphis and back. And ever since, every time I get a job or a gig or something like that, now I got some reliable transportation where I can get around. And all of that wouldn't have been possible had I just given up because I was worrying over nothing. None of this stuff wouldn't have happened. So that was one of my examples about don't worry for nothing. And recently, I had another example, because sometimes when we go through things and we learn the lesson, the Most High would come back around and throw a little test at you to see will you regress or backslide to your old ways of thinking. Now, I've been getting some signs from the cosmos that Oya was trying to reach out to me, and this was one of the messages that she was trying to tell me. And within showing me this message, because it was something real simple, I remember I was driving to the mailbox so I can get my check out the mail, and something told me to look at my tire. And when I looked at my tire, I seen this huge nail sticking out my tire. Now, I started to go into a small panic again, simply because I didn't have any money to get my tire fixed. But the panic only lasted for like 2 or 3 seconds, because it was one thing that I forgot. See, a couple months ago, I had this huge nail stuck in my tire, and I went and bought this stuff at AutoZone where you can take this little tool with this little rubber pipe and stick that rubber pipe inside of whatever the punctured hole was, and the rubber would expand and fill up the hole, and it'll pretty much make your tire damn near good as new. And I remember that I still had some of that stuff in my truck. So I was like, all right, well, at least I caught it now before it really did some damage to my tire. So I had to end up taking a screwdriver to screw the nail out of my tire. That's how lodged in it was. But again, to my surprise, when I finally pulled the nail out, my tire was still straight. Now, one good thing that I can say about the people who had my truck, they went and bought some very, very, very good tires. I think I got like some snow tires or something like that on this truck. So the treads on them was still good. So when the nail actually stuck itself into the tire, it didn't stick all the way in the tire. It just stuck inside of one of the treads. And when I pulled it out, there was no air or anything coming out the tire. So again, I was worrying for nothing. I already had the tools inside of my truck to fix it had the worst came to worst. But luckily for me, I didn't even have to go that far because everything was all right. So I don't know who this message was intended to go out to, but just know if your spirit guides, your ancestors, and if your higher self already told you how the situation that you're in is going to turn out, and you just got to be patient and let things unfold the way they're going to unfold, then stop worrying, because you're worrying for nothing. Just like I said in my last podcast, Oya was worried for nothing. She had Shango right where she wanted him, and she could have had that solidified position in his life without having to sabotage his relationship with Obanani. So that's my sub message that I wanted to get out the way that I wasn't able to really touch on my last podcast. So what I want to talk about for a little while is just about the connection between Elegua and Eshu, because that's one connection that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. And when I do hear them talk about it, they don't talk about it in the depth that I'm about to bring it to y'all, because since I have a totally different relationship with the Orishas that most people have, I can bring this stuff to a down to earth and more digestible perspective. So I can't lie, y'all. The story of Elegua and Eshu is like one of those stories that you hear like in movies or in novels or something like that. And when Elegua told me this story, it really warmed my heart, and it really showed me a testament to why Elegua is so cool with everybody. Like when you talk about Elegua's relationship with the other gods and with the other Orisha men, they're all so cool with Elegua, damn near to the point where they're like, this person and Elegua is one and the same. Shango and Elegua is one and the same. Eshu and Elegua is one and the same. And the way he explained it to me was, when they say one and the same, it's kind of like when you take your index finger and your middle finger and cross them, and you be like, man, we so close, we like this. I gotta do it like that because y'all can't see my hands right now, but that's how he explained it. So talking about Eshu, because I'm not gonna really go too deep on him, simply because I did a whole podcast talking about how Elegua represents your inner child, and I broke the whole Eshu deity down in that podcast. But I didn't tell y'all how Elegua and Eshu met, and why they're one and the same. So for this story, we gotta go all the way back to around the time that Elegua first landed at the crossroads. So Ogun kicked him out the house, and now he's just wandering around in the crossroad, becoming one with nature, and also making some really, really good connections. And among these connections that Elegua made, he ends up running across this other little boy that kind of reminds him of himself. And this little boy, his name was Eshu. So the way Elegua met him was that Elegua was walking past, I don't know if this was like a village or just a place where there was some little huts, some little houses or whatever. And Elegua saw this little black boy running out the house with all of this food in his hand. And it looked like he had a bag that had some stuff in it too, just like the food part on the turret. And while he's running out at full speed, there's a lady yelling out, screaming, "Yo, stop that boy, stop that boy." So Eshu, he's running, laughing. And since Elegua and the little boy kind of looked alike in a way, Elegua, he started to run too, simply because he didn't want to be associated with that boy and be mistaken for him and he get in trouble. But there was just one thing about Elegua. He was super, super, super hungry. I mean, Ogun wouldn't feed him because he wouldn't do his bidding. So now Elegua and Eshu, they're running out the village trying to find somewhere to hide. And they got this big ass mob of parents and people running after them because apparently Eshu done went and stole people food out of their house and making a run for it. Now, when I say he stole food, imagine you're a parent or a mom or something like that, and you just baked a fresh pie and you got it out there on the cylinder in your window, and the little Eshu comes and knock on your door saying, "Ma'am, I'm so hungry. Do you have any food?" And since you're a good-hearted person, you say, "Yeah, I just finished making this pie that's sitting over here on the windowsill, and if you just wait right here, let me go get a knife and cut you a slice of the pie." And when you go to get your knife and you run back to the window where your pie is, the pie and Eshu is gone, running down the street. Man, that dude was funny. I can't lie. So now y'all can see why Eshu got all these people coming after him. So Eshu ended up getting away and hiding behind this huge tree. But Elegua, since he was a little bit slower than Eshu, they ended up catching up to Elegua. Now, Elegua lost Eshu in the process, but he kind of had a small inkling to where he may be at, but he didn't really know for sure. And you know, Elegua don't tell a lie. So when everybody asked him, "Where was that little black boy that was with you that stole all of our food?" Elegua innocently said, "I honestly don't know where he went. And the reason why I was running is because I didn't want y'all to think that I was the one that did it, and I'm innocent. I didn't have anything to do with it." So once everyone dispersed and went back to their village and went back into their house, Elegua, at this point, he's super tired, he's worn out, he's hungry. Now he's sad because he's even more lost. And all of a sudden, he just hears this, "Psst, psst. Over here, over here." And sure enough, it was Eshu. And he was like, "Yo, man, I really thought she was about to rat me out back there." And even though Elegua was pissed off about the situation because he was pretty much placed into a situation that he had nothing to do with, he was like, "Yo, man, why did you steal all of those people food like that?" And Eshu told him the reason why he did what he did was because there was a few people's houses that he went over, and he would knock on their door and ask them for food, and he would know that they got food. He could damn near see that they got food. And they would blatantly lie to his face and say, "Nah, I don't got no food." So him being real pissed off about that, he would go run inside of the house, take some food out the fridge and run back out. And then there was a couple houses that he went over where he would ask them for food, and they would go all the way out their way to give him the smallest piece of food, even though they had an abundance of food that they could have gave him. They deliberately, because they were so selfish and they was just so hardened with their heart, so he would do the same thing. And Eshu, he really didn't have any regrets or any remorse for what he did. And when Elegua heard the full story of what Eshu was going through, he started to really have some compassion and some understanding for Eshu, because just like Elegua, Eshu was also kicked out of his house. But the reason why Eshu was kicked out of his house was because Eshu was that type of kid to where he would always speak up and speak the truth in a situation, no matter who liked it, no matter if it was politically correct, no matter if it was moral or anything like that. And he didn't really hold back. And the thing about it is, when you live in a world that thrives on evil, and you live in a world to the point where it's hard for you to really say what's on your mind without offending someone in a place of power. But see, Eshu, just like Elegua, also had the favor of the Most High, and he was also born from a cosmic mother, which is the Queen of Virgo. Now, I'm going to talk more about the Virgo constellation, and I'm going to talk more about planet Mercury as well, where Eshu comes from. I'm going to talk about all of that when I get around to talking about Biggie and his cosmic origin, because that's going to be very interesting. I promise y'all it's going to be very interesting. So once Eshu told Elegua his backstory and why he got kicked out and all of that, Elegua really started to build a very, very close friendship with Eshu, almost to the point where they were like brothers, because for helping him out, all the things that Eshu took from the villagers and all of that, he quote unquote broke bread with Elegua. And this is something that Elegua really takes to heart, because he really wasn't expecting anything from Eshu, but the fact that out of the kindness of his heart, Eshu decided to break bread with Elegua, that really meant a lot to him. So after that crazy night, Eshu and Elegua will go out together, and while they was around each other, Eshu taught Elegua about the dark side, taught him about the dark side of the fairy kingdom, the dark side of the tree of life, and pretty much everything that Eshu learned while he was on planet Mercury with his mom, the Queen of Virgo. And this is the reason why when you hear these origin stories about Eshu, you always hear something about the planet Mercury, because the planet Mercury is the messenger planet, and when Mercury is in retrograde, it's hard for anybody to get their message across, because depending on their sign, you'll always have that really, really thin line between not conveying enough what your message is and overdoing it, and the issues that end up ensuing because of that. And Elegua, he taught Eshu about the light side of the game and all the things that he learned from Odua and Yimbo and all of his brothers and sisters who were gods and goddesses in the making. And Eshu was like, man, I would really love to meet your family one day. And Elegua, even though he was a little bit weary about how they would take him or how they would accept him, since Elegua had a good heart, he was like, sure, once I figure out how to get back to my dad, I definitely wouldn't mind showing you to my family and having you meet them. So the next day came, and it was time for Eshu to go on his rampage, and Elegua was like, look, instead of you over here with these villagers trying to get these frivolous scraps, why don't we go to the other side of town where the big farms are, where you got these farmers that got this abundance of food and these abundance of vegetables and stuff like that, and we can just have a field day getting food, and the farmer got so much of it that he won't even notice that it's gone. And Eshu was like, for real? Shit, let's go do it. So they grabbed their little bags and stuff and started on their journey. Now, during this journey, Elegua learned a lot about Eshu. One of the things that he learned was, just like him, Eshu's dad wasn't really around like that, so Eshu was kind of able to run wild, and he has a very high disregard for morals, and sometimes Eshu can be overindulgent and he can be very greedy if he's left unattended. And Elegua learned this when they went to the first farm. So they went to that first farm, and Eshu racked up. He got so many things that it was so hard for him to even run, because he was getting too much food. He was acting like he was at the produce section of Kroger or something. While Elegua got his little fruit and a couple vegetables and a few things just to get him through the day. Eshu pretty much got enough to last him damn near a whole month. To the point where they almost got caught, because Eshu ended up taking so much food from that farm that it was enough for the farmer to notice that he had a substantial amount of food that was gone. So Elegua was like, okay, I see how this is about to be. If I keep letting this dude get food, he gonna end up making the whole block hot, and it's gonna get to the point to where me and this nigga gonna end up on the farmer's most wanted list. So Elegua was like, how about this? Since I can tell that I'm the responsible one, how about I go get food for the both of us? So what he did was, he took his hat off of his head, took some berries, made some dye, and he ended up making a hat that was half black and half red. And then he also did the same thing with his clothes. So that way, if he happens to get caught or something like that by one of the farmers, nobody would know that it was him that did it. If anything, they're still gonna think that it was two different people, which is what he wanted them to think. So he did just that, and just like he prepared for, just like he expected, the farmers were keeping watch of their crops. But unlike Eshu, Elegua was very careful not to make any noise or anything like that, because since Elegua been outside dealing with nature and all of that, one thing that he had to learn was the art of stealth, and he was damn good at it, if I say so myself. So after he was done and he was trying to quietly lead a scene, something happened to where Elegua tripped over something, and when he tripped over it, it ended up setting off for the farmers to go and look and see what was going on. So Elegua made sure when he was running away that he would position himself in a way to where every time the farmer looked at him, they would suspect that it was a different person, because when one farmer looked at Elegua, he was wearing all red, but when the other farmer looked at Elegua, it looked like Elegua was wearing all black. So in their bout of confusion, Elegua was able to get away with all the food, and him and Eshu was able to have them a nice little feast. So they ended up being very, very cool. And once everything happened, as far as him notifying Obatala about the stuff that was going on with Ogun and all of that stuff, Elegua was finally able to come back to the house. But the thing about it was, since Elegua had so much fun outside of the house, it got to the point where now, even though he could stay at the house as long as he wanted to, Elegua would rather be at his crossroad, because that's where he met all of his connections at, that's where he had all of the fun at and all of that stuff. But one thing Elegua never forgot about was Eshu. Now, being the wise child that Elegua was, he knew what type of a troublemaker that Eshu could be, and he also understands that even even though Eshu has a dark aura around him that could be synonymized as he's a bad person, meaning that he has a bad rap, Elegua understands Eshu because of that talk that they had. So he understands why he has their aura around him, because in Eshu's case, that dark aura protects him just like that light aura protects Elegua. So he would make sure that every day and every night before Elegua would leave and go out to play, he would always leave some food outside for Eshu. And this really made Eshu very happy, because being him, it's real hard to find true friends that really care about you. Those true friends that when y'all was down on y'all luck together, y'all stuck by each other. And even now that one person is up and the other person is still down on their luck, that person who was up is still looking out for that person who was down on their luck. And when you make friends like that, those are long lasting friendships. And since they learned so much from each other, they ended up becoming mirror images of each other, to the point where you can pretty much say that Elegua and Eshu are one and the same. If you can't say that with any other Orishas, you can truly say that Elegua and Eshu are one and the same, because they taught each other how to be one and the same. And with me being a Gemini with a Virgo moon, I can truly say that I literally have all three inside of me. When I go to my higher self, that's Papa Elegua. My inner self, where my soul is, that innocence, that's where the baby Elegua is at. And then my lower self represents Eshu. And talking about this on a more 3D and relatable type of level is that the reason why Eshu has to stay outside of the home when you're doing your altars and stuff like that is because since Eshu represents your issues, when you're trying to turn your house into an ironclad protective space, when you keep Eshu outside, you keep your issues outside, meaning that nothing that's of evil or malintent will even be able to step foot in your lawn. If you have a very, very good relationship with Eshu and you have an altar set up for him outside of your door, he'll keep all of that evil outside. And the reason why also when you do your altars and stuff like that, that Papa Elegua is always at the door, because at the end of the day, Papa Elegua has all of the keys to any door that you would want to get into. And since Elegua represents that childlike innocence, that's one of the things that you working with Elegua and Papa Elegua, they're going to make sure that that innocence and that energy that entails is what's going to be around your house. So it's kind of like having a master lock as well as a deadbolt on your house, as well as a gate, and as well as a pit bull. All of those things, as well as you having a hidden cannon on the top of your roof, to the point where even if someone is able to get in, you can still shoot them down from up top. This is pretty much what it means to have Eshu and Elegua working together to protect not only your house, but also to protect your aura. Because when I talk about these deities and when I talk about these beings, all I'm talking about are things that are inside of you. Papa Elegua is your higher self. When you at the crossroads and you don't know where to go, you don't know what decision to make, trust in your higher self, aka Papa Elegua. And Papa Elegua is going to make sure that you go on the road that's going to be more suitable for whatever righteous path that you're supposed to be on. And your inner self, aka your inner child, will let you know when you're on that right path. Now, the thing about it is, Eshu and Elegua are supposed to be balanced, meaning that just because you're on this righteous path and you're quote unquote doing the right thing and all of this stuff, never forget your lower self. Never forget where you come from. Never forget about Eshu. Don't get so high and mighty to the point where you think that you can't be touched. Don't get so high and mighty in whatever path you're in, talking about I'm the king, I'm the best, and I'm the all of this stuff, and you feel like that you can't be touched, because those are the type of feelings and emotions that really trigger for Eshu to put some issues into your life to let you know that, look, yeah, you might be on this righteous path, but you still got human skin like the rest of us. And as long as you got human skin, that human skin can get touched, nigga. You can be touched. But man, when you're balanced to the point where even when you're having fun, you're still righteous. Even when you are letting your hair down a little bit, you're still doing it in a righteous type of way that's not gonna thwart or take you off of that righteous path that your higher self deemed for you to be on. Because at the end of the day, my definition of my righteous path might not be what your definition of your righteous path is. For my righteous path, I might have to fuck some shit up and get a record and make some people in high places very unhappy with me. And that's the path that I chose before I came to this earth. And that's the righteous path that I'm supposed to be on. So I'll always be protected and all of that. But you can't look at what I'm doing and say that what I'm doing is not righteous, just because when you came to this earth, you had a totally different set of rules and a totally different set of paths that only you can embark on. And I can't look at what you're doing and say that what you're doing is wrong and unrighteous and all of that. That's why I never really could subscribe to these religions and stuff like that, because for some people, they need it. That's why I don't bash it, because for some people, if they didn't have religion in their life, they would have killed themselves a long time ago. Some people, if they didn't have religion in their lives, they probably would have done harm to some innocent people or anything. So I don't bash it, but my thing is, religion, it just isn't for everybody. And I just don't like when people tend to judge other people people just because they may not have the same religious beliefs as another person. And that's the only thing that I disagree with when it comes to religion. So one thing that I'm really starting to see on my particular spiritual path, because as y'all can see, I like dealing with the inner child, because in a lot of these situations, when you look at people who were serial killers and people who were mass murderers and all of this stuff, these people that had real traumatic lives, I would say over 99 to 97% of a lot of those people, you could stem back the beginning of their trauma to their childhood. And if you're a stage 3 enlightened man, or you're a stage 3 Akasha woman, you can look at somebody and pretty much look into their soul and see that inner child for what they are. And in a lot of ways, that's when you end up tearing up. That's when you end up getting your feelings involved, because you peer into their soul that's still innocent, that didn't want no parts of all of this stuff that your carnal mind and your immoral reptilian brain had you doing, that got you so far off of the righteous path that you should have been on. You're pretty much fizzling out of control, and your inner child is kind of pissed off because they're like, damn, maybe next time, maybe in the next life, maybe with the next body, and that's not a good feeling. So I've been doing a lot of inner work with my inner child, and it's been a very, very interesting experience. I can't lie. For all the men out there, when you get back in touch with your inner child, it's gonna truly feel like you're a cosmic father, and you got this little son that's you, that represents you, that's so innocent, and you just want to protect it with your life, because you already know the evil beings and the evil media and all of the things that can travel through your eyes, your nose, your ears, everything that's a window to your soul. And if those things affect that innocent child, and to face those things, that innocent child is now forced to grow up, which in this life, in this earth, your innocent child is supposed to stay a baby. It's not supposed to grow up. So now, since your innocent child inside of you is growing up, and it's to that point to where spiritually you're rebelling because you feel like you can handle it. You feel like you're quote unquote grown, and I don't need y'all no more. This is when you start to see a lot of people fizzle out of control, start getting in trouble with the law, start going to jail a lot, going through these real crazy issues simply because their innocence was compromised all the way back to their childhood. So as I've been going on my personal journey with my inner child, I started to find out that everything that I would do that appeased my soul, I would just get this really, really strong burst of energy. And when I look inside myself, I could just see my inner child having a good old time, clapping and running around like he just got the greatest news in the world, or like I just bought my inner self the biggest toy in the world. And it's fun, I can't lie. And there's a few things that I just want to share with y'all just about the observations that I learned about my inner child. And hopefully with me talking about the stuff that I'm going through and the stuff that I'm realizing, maybe y'all can use these things and analyze your own life and see what your inner child is trying to tell you. So when I was a kid, even though I was very outgoing and inquisitive and all of that, I knew at an early age that there was just something different about me. Now, it took me years and years and years to realize what that was. But for the time being, coming up, I didn't really have too many friends like that. And for the most part, I had to learn at an early age how to be content and how to make fun and be happy alone. And for the most part, I would have so much fun, and I would just be in my own little world, having fun and doing whatever. But as soon as that thought come across my head that I'm alone, and I look around and see everybody else playing and I'm just over here by myself, I start to get sad. Even though when I was in my own little world doing my own thing, I was having a lot of fun doing that. Translation, even now as an adult, being on this stage 3 enlightened man phase, spiritually and mentally, living in this world where most of the people that I'm around is either stage 1, just now finding themselves, or they're at a point where they got so much drama going on in their lives, they haven't even got to any of the stages yet. They still acting in their lower self. And me personally, I don't really like hanging around people that's acting in their lower selves all the time. And I don't like talking about lower self type of topics all the time. I like talking about stuff like this, talking about the Orishas and spirituality and metaphysics and the things that I learned about my higher self and my inner self and my lower self. And it's just so hard to find people to talk to about that kind of stuff. So naturally, my circle is extremely small. I don't really have a lot of friends like that. And just like Eshu, the few people that I do call my friends, they've been there for me when I was down on my luck, when I was homeless, didn't have nowhere to sleep, didn't have no money or anything to give and that type of aspect. And I can't lie, just like when I was a kid and I'm looking around and seeing everybody in the playground playing and all of that stuff, it's like that in my life now. I look around and see all these dudes telling dudes that they need to have mindless and goalless sex with these succubus women, and just seeing them one by one getting all fucked up spiritually and emotionally and all of that, seeing all of this crazy stuff going on in the world. And I can't lie, sometimes that inner issue in me wants to go out and have some fun and get crazy too. But since I got a Taurus cusp on my Gemini sun sign, that Papa Legba inside of me kind of pulls me back, shows me some examples of this is what will happen to you if you decide to do X, Y, and Z. And that pretty much pulls me back into my bubble where everything is safe at and I'm spiritually protected. So when things unfold the way that Papa Legba told me that things was gonna unfold, I'm cool because I'm like, shit, I'm glad I didn't do X, Y, and Z because I'll be fucked up just like they are. So I remember when I was a kid and Christmas time would come and I would be so happy to get my toys and my wrestling men and stuff like that. And the one thing that I would really hate, because I don't really use that word a lot, but when I was a kid, one thing I really hated is when I would get something like one of those huge RC trucks, or I get a big car or something like that, and it came with one of those square type of batteries that you had to put it on the charger. And my mom and dad, they didn't really understand what I needed to make the truck or the car work. So I would just have these nice cars and these real nice toys that I just couldn't play with because in one way or another, I didn't have everything needed to make it work. So I would just throw those to the side. They end up collecting dust and all of that. And in the meantime, I just play with the toys that I already got. Now, the thing about it is, when I would play with my wrestling men and I play with my toys and stuff, I would say almost 9 times out of 10, once that toy gets into my world, it's not the same that it was intended to be. For example, this is stupid, but when I was a kid, I had this whole show that I created and it was called PWW, aka Pikachu's World Wrestling. It's funny as hell thinking about it now, but there was something divine in everything that I did as a kid the more I go into the shadow work. So in Pikachu's World Wrestling, all of my wrestling men that was participating in the matches and stuff like that, I would say 90% of those toys weren't actual wrestling men. Like I had this Toy Story Woody action figure that I was able to move its legs and its arms and its hands and all of that. It was like a fully functional action figure. And in my world, aka in that Pikachu's World Wrestling matchup, his name wouldn't be Woody from Toy Story. His name would be the Crusher or something like that. And in my world, the Crusher has his own background story. He has his own nemesis, has his own girlfriend and all of this other stuff. But the thing about it was, in my world, it made sense. And I was always content with whatever decision that I came up with that this character is going to play in my show. Translation: once I got older and I grew into an adult and I started looking for jobs and stuff like that, the first thing that I would try to do is pretty much what my mom and dad was making me do, pretty much what everybody else was telling me to do, which was get a job working at FedEx, working at UPS, some type of factory or some type of retail store or something like that. And the thing about it was, even though I would work as hard as I can, I wasn't content and I was very, very miserable at those type of jobs, simply because the most important part that would have made that job so great, which would have been something that'll soothe my soul instead of something that'll just grow my pockets, I wouldn't end up being on those jobs long, because with those type of jobs, morale is a very, very prevalent thing. So if the boss sees you unhappy, and even if it's a situation to where you may be doing your job and all of that, but if you got that type of energy to where this doesn't suit you and you want something new and all of that, and you're around people who are pretty much robots, they pretty much been working that job ever since they was a lot younger, so they pretty much got this seniority complex. And I would get picked on a lot for being slow, for not doing things in the way that people say that it's supposed to be done, but it would get done. And I didn't end up staying in those jobs too long. But once I finally started working in fields that I was a lot more involved in spiritually, whether that was doing stagehand work, which I really love doing because I'm right there where the artists are and able to say that I was responsible for putting together the stage that this artist is performing on. But the thing is, while I'm at work, in my mind, I'm not being a worker. In my mind, I'm imagining myself being on that stage performing and imagining the crowd yelling and screaming for me and all of that type of stuff. And that's what got me through. And still to this day, that's what helps me get through. But that's something that I really had to learn about myself. I had to really learn what are the type of jobs that my soul, my inner child would like to do. Because since I'm a Virgo moon, anything that makes sense, I'm all the way down for it. Whatever type of job it is, as long as it makes sense to me, my path, and my inner child, my inner self. A lot of people can say a lot of things about me as far as my style of work and all of that. But one thing that nobody can't say about me is that when I work, I don't work my ass off, because I do. Virgos, our work ethic is out of this world. Now, I'm glad that I'm a Virgo moon and not a Virgo sun, because just like Oya, Virgos can have a tendency of overworking themselves as well. And one thing that as a kid I valued, and one thing that I still value to this day as an adult, is my nap time, my sleep time, and my resting time. That means a lot to me. And being in this spiritual path that I'm on, I get a lot of my spiritual downloads when I sleep, and I get more prevalent and more vivid dreams and astral travels and all of that type of stuff the more hours of sleep that I get. So I try to get at least an 8-hour sleep as much as I can. And I mean, sleep is good for you because you wake up energized and you don't wake up with an attitude and all of that stuff. So all around, it's good. I don't care about these niggas talking about I'll sleep when I die and all of that other stuff. Get your sleep, y'all. Get your sleep. Get your rest. I can talk about my inner child all day, but I'm gonna give y'all this one last thing because I told y'all that this video was gonna end up being a lot longer than what I expected. See, I know myself. I knew that this was gonna end up happening, but let me squeeze in this one last thing before I let y'all go. When I was a kid and I would make friends, especially friends who were girls, I didn't have a filter on how I would love because my mom and dad loved me so much. And at this time in my life, I didn't really have a reason to not love everybody else the way my mom and dad loved me. But one thing that I found out about myself was that since I was already to myself, I was already alone and having a lot of fun alone because like I said, it took 9 years before my little brother came on the scene. And even then, I was so much older than him that it took us a while to be able to really play together. So even though I had a little brother, I still felt alone because it was just so much stuff that he couldn't do with me yet because he was still a baby. So when I did find people that I got real cool with and stuff like that, and I would show them the same type of love and I would have that faith and hope that they would do the same for me. Those instances where I would get betrayed or I would get done wrong, it would hurt me a lot worse than the average person because I'm like, yo, you didn't have no reason to do to me what you did because I ain't been nothing but a good friend to you and you gonna do me like that? And I didn't like that feeling that I got from that because that feeling made me go into my Eshu and want to fuck some shit up or want to fuck somebody up. And I was always one of those type of people to where every time someone would piss me off or something like that and I got into an altercation, for some reason, even in that situation, people would pick their side over me simply because since I didn't really have a whole lot of friends like that, nobody was really on my side except those few times where my mom and dad had to come up to the school and diffuse a lot of things. And an example of this when it came to a girl standpoint was in the 6th grade. This was around the time that B2K was coming out. This was a year before Pretty Ricky came out. So there was this song that came out and it was called That's the Reason Why I Love You. And anybody who knows about B2K, y'all know what that song is. So it was a running joke in our school that a lot of us guys would do. And we would sing the song, but we would change some of the words up and we would say, that's the reason why I hate you. And we'll just start changing the words around and making these little battle rap verses and stuff like that. So in my class, there was this girl and she wanted to jump in. So she wrote me her note because that was back before kids didn't have cell phones and stuff like that. So we had to do things like pass notes in class. So I'm in my 6th grade class and she passes me her note. So in her note, she got her little verse talking about that's the reason why I hate you, da 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 da. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I take out a sheet of paper and I write my note. Now, since I'm used to battle rapping with the boys, we're used to saying vulgar things to each other and stuff like that because that's what guys do. You know, we're not gonna get offended or anything like that because of words because we were all just playing a game, just battle rapping. That's what we used to do. So I wrote my note to her and I think I said something like, that's the reason why I hate you, eat my nuts, da 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 da. I forgot what else I said. So I passed the note back to her and everybody in her group was looking like, yo, he flamed you, he flamed you. So I'm over here looking all cool and whatnot. So since there was a lot of commotion going on in the classroom, my teacher looked over and was like, yo, what's all this commotion going on that nobody's paying attention to the PowerPoint presentation that I got on the Scantron? And all of my Generation Z people look up the word Scantron. Man, I feel like I was in the Stone Age. But anyway, so in her group was a girl that didn't really like me like that. And she hated the fact that I was able to get a one-up on her friend. So she grabbed my note out of her hand and was like, look, this is what Ricky wrote. Look what Ricky wrote. So my teacher ends up reading the note and just like you would expect for a teacher to do, the teacher got real mad to the point where he wrote me up and sent me to the principal's office. And had my dad never came up to the school, I would have got suspended for doing that. Now, I was very furious. I was frustrated. I was furious because I truly felt betrayed. Not only did I feel betrayed, nobody else stood up for me. Nobody stood up for me and was like, yo, this was a battle rap that we was all participating in. This was a battle rap that we was all doing. And when Rick said what he said, it wasn't a negative thing. He was just battle rapping like all the rest of us was. No, nobody came to my aid. No one stood up for me. I just had to bear all of that embarrassment and all of that stuff. I just had to bear it all by myself. Now, my mom and dad already didn't like me rapping, didn't even like the idea of even hearing me rap or anything like that. So the fact that I said that didn't really make it any better. And luckily, since my dad was so cool with the teacher, they was able to hash it out to the point where not only was he able to get the write-up thrown out so it wouldn't have turned into a suspension, he also had to end up talking to the girl's parents because she lied and told her parents everything that happened, and it was just this real big situation over nothing. And it messed me up because I had a lot going for me that weekend, and it was fucked up because I literally ended up getting in trouble that Friday. So now all of the games that my mom said she was going to buy me, all of the things that my dad had planned for me for that weekend, all of that stuff was gone down the drain. And I remember that situation mainly because I always tell people that the last time that I ever cried from a whooping was in the 6th grade because something within me got so mad and so defensive and just so dark. I just can't really explain it, but something just came over me to the point where I'm like, look, I was innocent at the end of the day. Last thing that I'm about to do is cry over some shit that wasn't even really my fault. So from that day on, no matter what my dad would do to try to make me cry from getting a whooping, it just wouldn't work. Now, it never got to the point where I raised my hand at my dad or anything like that. It was a lot of times that we fought verbally, but it never got to a physical situation. But from that day forward, if I was innocent about something and I know that I was innocent, I'm not gonna sit around and take the fall without pleading my case. Now, translation. Growing up and becoming an adult, I really appreciate the love that my mom and dad gave me. But I also understood that a lot of people out here have never even experienced love in general. So you can't expect for somebody to love you the way your mom and dad loved you. Or you can't expect for somebody to love you or look out for your best interest over your own self, especially in dealing with women. Because whether we like it or not, women have the upper hand when it comes to a lot of things. And it's easy for a woman to say something without any proof or anything like that. And if they have a sad enough face, and if they got a voice that quivers enough, if they got those puppy dog eyes that can well up in tears and cry convincingly enough, they can get you into some real bad trouble that you're gonna spend your whole life trying to get out of. And y'all know I'm only talking about those stage 1 succubus type of women, and also the women who are so far gone, so far lost in this world, in this matrix, that they haven't even got to the stages of enlightenment yet. So as an adult, I find it that the more I work in my higher self, the right people always end up finding themselves into my life, because since my higher self acts as that protector of my innocence, it's going to make sure that that situation and worse situations don't happen to me, as long as I'm acting in my higher self. Only when I act in my lower self that I start to attract issues, aka issues, into my life. So when it comes to my heart, I protect it with my life. When it comes to my inner child, I protect it with my life, because only I know what's best for me. And I got to make sure that with this work that I'm doing, that my inner child stays healthy, that my inner child stays playful, and that my inner child stays awake. So that's just a little bit about some things that I've been going through doing this shadow work, trying to heal a lot of these emotional wounds, spiritual wounds, and just overall removing a lot of this emotional and spiritual baggage, so that my inner child can have a nice, safe play area inside of my heart, so that when I need that inner creative energy, instead of me trying to look for an outward source or an outward temporary fix to get that, I can just go inside myself and dip into that infinite source of creative energy that we all have inside of us. You just need to get back in touch with your inner child, get to know it, and become friends with it. Because at the end of the day, Eshu means issues. Issues means it's you. Eshu, it's you. It's you. All of this stuff is you. So that's my little rant. Hopefully y'all could get some stuff out of that. I know I told a few stories and stuff like that, but everything that I say, it has a divine meaning to it, even if it's just a story or a pataki or whatever. So hopefully this can help somebody, and shout out to everybody who stayed and listened all the way to the end. And as always, if y'all want to donate, the donation links will be below, and this will help me to get better equipment so I can make these shows a lot greater. Also, any inquiries as far as wanting me to promote your page, your service, anything like that, as long as it makes sense. Don't be sending me no rinky-dink stuff thinking that I'm not gonna read it or I'm not gonna fact check it and make sure that everything is on point, because even though I'm a small channel per se, I still treat my channel to the point where my reputation is on the line, my brand is on the line, all of it is on the line when I'm promoting someone else's service. So last thing I want is for somebody to be like, Mr.BandClap recommended me to you and I got bad service. So do me a favor, make sure that if y'all are sending me inquiries that everything is on point, because I will be looking back over it on my Virgo shit to the smallest detail, making sure that everything is right. So until next time, BandClap TV.